I'm going to roll a casing for a 4-inch spiderweb shell, and I've got the flash bag already constructed and finished inside the end disc. It's all ready to pop into the casing. Now the rule of thumb when you're rolling a shell casing for a cylinder shell is that you would use 3 turns of paper, 70 pound, 60, 70 pound, maybe thicker for a 3-inch shell, 4 turns for a 4-inch, 5 turns for a 5-inch, etc. So this is a 4-inch shell. Ordinarily you'd use 3 turns of 60 or 70 pound paper, but on this occasion I'm going to be using a recycled paper. It's actually 90 pound, and because I'm going to put a chipboard liner into the casing afterwards, I'm only going to use 3 turns of this 90 pound. So what I do is I take the paper, I like to line it up parallel with the edge of my table, so I can see that everything's kind of in line and square to start with. I've got a 4-inch case former. The outside diameter is actually 3.5 inches. I place it on the paper, I get it square, then I roll it up. I give it a few turns more after it's rolled and scoop the paper towards me as I do it, just to tighten up the casing. And then I put about 1.5 inch strip of gummed paper along the edge there. This is just to hold the paper together while we get it pleated. I don't put the gum paper up the top or the bottom because these bits are going to be pleated over later anyway. And now I slide the casing off the former about 1 inch, 1.25 inches, so it's got some paper to pleat down here towards the centre. And then I place it onto a cardboard core like this. I put a little bit of rubber on the top so it doesn't slip around. And then I place my fuse assembly and end disc inside the end of the casing like that. Just give myself a little bit more. Okay. Now a lot of people will, at this point, pleat the whole lot down, 4 turns all down in one go like this, and then put the end disc on. I think if you do that you leave yourself open to ending up with little tabs that stick out on the corners of each of your pleat, which you don't really want. You want it all nice and smooth around the edge when you're finished. It'll also be a lot thicker if you do it like that. You won't be able to get the pleats down as crisply and as neatly as if you do one layer at a time. Then it takes a moment or two to go around and pleat them individually. I'll use a little stick to aid in getting the pleat nice and tight and crisp, and I'll do a close-up in a minute of the top view to show you exactly what it is I'm doing. But I go around the inside here and I'm pleating it. You can pleat the pleats directly towards the centre of your fuse. You can pleat them a little off centre to the left or to the right, it's personal choice. And then as I get towards the end of my first turn of paper, I use a brass rammer from a 3/4 inch fountain set, and I want to just go round persuade all those pleats to go down nice and flat. I pay particular attention to the edge where it meets up with the edge of the case former here, because I don't want the little nipples of paper poking out there. As you've done 3 or 4 turns, those little nipples tend to build up and they get quite big, so I want to flatten them all out. Then I go around again on my second turn. As I said before, it doesn't need any glue on this. It's all going to hold together nicely when the shell's spiked. Now at this point I've come round, I'm only putting 3 turns on this, so I've come round to the point where I've only got 1 turn left. And then I just put a diagonal cut down the side there so that that last piece of paper is nice and flat, that last pleat is flat. And I've got a complete turn left on there. Tamp it again. Be careful when you tamp it, don't lift your tamping stick or whatever too high, you'll end up smashing it down on the time fuse and ruining it. So I just lift it 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch and bring it down, get it nice and firm. Now I'm on my last turn. I start at the point where the paper finished there, pleat it in, and push your thumb nice and tightly up against the edge here. You want to get it nice and tight on the corner here, you don't want any bits sticking out if possible. And just pleat it all the way around. Okay, now it's all, your last turn is finished there. Now I take something, you can use a hammer, you can use any kind of implement you like, but you want to knock the pleats nice and flat. And around the edge of your casing you'll have these little bits sticking out. You want to get rid of them. You want to break these little points all around the edge here. These points, if they're very pronounced, when you come to spike it and put your paste wrap on later, you'll just accentuate those points, they'll be bigger. And when the lift charge goes off and something's poking out from the outside of the shell, it gives the opportunity for the lift charge to rip the paper off with your paste layer and allow fire into the shell. So just knock it all nice and smooth. Then I pop the end disc over. And then just one more time go around, make sure that there's nothing poking out past the perimeter of your end disc. And as I said, if I was going to just fill this casing immediately, I'd take it off the former, turn it over, fill it, close the other end, then I'd go and spike it immediately, which is going to pull everything tight and keep it in place. But because I'm not going to be spiking this and filling it for probably a day or so, I just take 3 pieces of gum paper, just place them equally around the top of the casing here on the end disc. Just push down on it and then just smooth your gum paper down. Now at this point I use a little glue and I just put a fillet of it around the fuse, just filling the gap between the end disc and the fuse there so it's nicely sealed. When you come to spike it later, if you're not using an offset spiking pattern, you're going to be pulling on this fuse left, right and whatever as you're putting 90-degree turns around it to spike it, and the glue will probably crack at that point anyway, so bear in mind that this isn't the final seal to keep the fire out from this vulnerable area here around the fuse. Later you're going to come and paste it and you'll lap your paste layer up against the edge of the fuse all round as well, just to make sure that no fire gets in. So that casing basically is finished, it's ready to fill. Inside you've got your flash bag and everything, and I'll just do a little clip now to show you close up the view from the top how the pleats go down. Okay, here's another 4-inch casing, and it's been rolled 3 turns as the other one was. Now I just slide it off a little bit, so I've got about just under 1 inch overlapping here. Now I insert my flash bag assembly and the disc. The case former, of course, has got a recess in there to allow you to put fuses, flash bags or whatever in there. I just have a look, see if that's a little bit more. Just tamp it down, make sure that your disc is up against the end of the former. And here's a little stick I use. It's just got a tapered end on it. It's blunt, it's not sharp. Now I start here where the paper's loose there, and I pull it down, keep a finger on it. Now I put my little stick behind and I pull the pleat tight. And mine, I normally aim the pleat at the centre of the fuse like that. So that's my first pleat. Then just using the stick, pull it down each time. You can do it without the stick, probably easier on a bigger casing. Just work your way around. It doesn't matter how many pleats it takes to complete your circle. Okay, that's one turn of paper that I pleated down now. And this is the point where I take my little brass rammer. And what I'm trying to do is get rid of these little bits here on the corner that you can see are slightly proud. Because when I've pleated more layers down, and particularly on a big shell like an 8" or something, and you've got 8 layers to pleat down, these little tabs on the side here tend to build up and they get quite big. So as you go around and knock these down, you want to be aiming here. You want to keep your rammer on the periphery of the disc just to flatten all these little bits sticking up. And that's all it takes. You don't need any glue. As I say, the end disc is going to hold all this in place afterwards. So you continue now on your second turn. As I say, I bring my pleats in a direct line if I can towards the fuse. You can put it obliquely, you can go left or right of the fuse, it makes no difference. And you can of course dispense with your stick and just get your fingers in there and pull it down with your fingers, but my fingers are a bit arthritic-y and I find this stick helps. Okay, now I've come round, you can see where the outside turn of the paper is. And this is where I just put a cut here at an angle down to the bottom, and then my last pleat. And then I start off with a nice clean turn of paper. Go around with your little rammer again. Just knock all those corners down. Now I turn it around and I start here where the seam of the paper is, and just push it down to the centre. As you push it, put your weight of your thumb on the rim of the case here to take it down. Okay, now it's all down. Now I take my little wooden beater stick here, just flatten it all down. And you can see how there's little points sticking out from the rim there. I don't know if they're clear on the video here, but you want to get rid of those. So just give them a knock. Just break these little points that are protruding out from the perimeter of your end disc. And I pop another end disc over the top, and just check that there's nothing standing out proud from around your end disc. A little bit there you want to just knock it flat. And I take my 3 strips of gummed paper, make sure my disc is centered, just push down on it, and now just put your bits of paper down there. And finally, just inside this disc here, which has a hole about a 1/16 of an inch bigger than the fuse diameter, just fill it with white glue, Elmer's glue, anything like that. Just run your finger around so you push it down into the cavity around the fuse. And she's finished. Remove it from the former, and there's your shell casing. Inside you've got your flash bag, and then the final thing I do now, because this is going to be a spider shell and the stars in there are going to be quite big, far bigger than the cut stars you'd use ordinarily in a 4-inch shell, I take a piece of 20-point chipboard and just roll it up. I like to spin it up into a small diameter like that. When you let go of it, it springs back out again. And I just put a little bit of glue, I need a tiny bit, just on the inside edge there. And now drop it into your casing. Make sure it's nicely seated up against the bottom there. Press the bit where the glue is against the shell casing. And now just pull the liner away from the other bit of paper there and just put another dab of glue on there. And now just put your hand in there and backspin it so that it's nice and tight up against the inside of your casing. And there you go, it's finished.